Hey everyone, welcome back to this new installment of Revolutions, the ongoing diary of my spins. I'm going to get started with it. Too much blah blah, hopefully. Um, I've been listening to a lot of classical music, as I said in my last installment of Revolutions. I've continued to do that. Classical music is largely ignored by a lot of vinyl video makers, and yet some of the most inspirational, readily available music that you can find, in every thrift store or charity shop, as they call them in England, or op shops, as we call them here in Australia. You can find top-notch classical music for absolute discounted prices, and even in record stores, you can go to record stores here in Melbourne, and you can find a ton of really amazing, first-rate classical music for like $2, $3, $5. It's a crying shame. But start slow. I started on classical music, maybe about 10 years ago, I want to say, and with things like Debussy and Satie and Chopin and a bit of Bach, just slowly building up, a little bit of Stravinsky here and there, just so that it becomes palatable and enjoyable. And I encourage you to do the same. When you want to break into a style of music, you start with the classics, or you start very, like targeted. Here are two great composers that have been playing this week: Bela Bartok and Igor Stravinsky. Two piano concertos with Stephen Bishop on piano and the BBC Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Colin Davis. Look at this beauty as well. It's just amazing piece of artwork there that you've got there. Bartok and Stravinsky, two essential 20th century composers. Bartok, so ahead of its time. I mean, Bartok pretty much announces Coltrane. I mean, the sense of freedom and of playfulness and like the intellectual side of his music. He was a Hungarian composer. Stravinsky was Russian. Composed lots of ballet music for ballets. Everybody knows the Firebird, or the Rite of Spring, obviously, which is one of the defining works of the 20th century. Since I'm talking Bartok, pulled out this amazing little piece on Virgo, in English, Sonata for two pianos and drums. 7 pieces out of the Microcosmos. With Alphonse and Alois Kontarski on keyboards, and Christopher Kaskel and Heinz König on drums. Very atypical kind of avant-garde piece as well. Not something that you would put for casual listening. You really have to concentrate on this one, but I think it's a very, very beautiful piece of work, and if you can score this for cheap, why not? Continuing with some Schubert. I love Schubert. So delicate. Great entry point into classical music. I'm pretty fond of string quartets, string quintets. This is an octet. This is the New York Wind Quintet and a Schubert octet in F major, Opus 166. Very delicate, romantic, sort of evocative classical music with strings and winds, beautiful oboe and violin playing there on this. It's superb, and it's so well recorded, and it's so well played. It's just classy. Likewise, here is a beautiful record. Oh my God. Tillman Wick, or I think it's probably Tillman Wick, because it's German. And Coco Sakoda on piano, and they do 3 pieces: Schubert, Mendelssohn, and Schumann. um, all of which are really, again, delicate, sophisticated, very tender pieces. Another key 20th century composer, I was talking about Bartok and Stravinsky just before, is the great Olivier Messiaen. Olivier Messiaen was a French 20th century organist, pianist who composed a ton of symphonies and pieces, inspired largely by mystical and Christian themes. You know, you can see the name of this one, Vision de la Main, don't need the translation for that, I don't think. This is a piano duet with his wife, Yvonne Loriot, who incidentally was the very first person to ever perform. I was talking about Bartok a second ago. This is Piano Concerto number 2 by Bartok. She was the very first person to perform it in France, having learnt it in only 8 days or something. She was kind of a genius as well. Messiaen, very sort of avant-garde composer. His rhythms and tempos can be very stilted, and you have to concentrate a lot. This, for example, is it's not a kind of modern classical kind of piece like Debussy or Chopin, where it's highly melodic. It's not melodic. It's, as I said, it's fractured. It's in the same school of thought as, for example, Arnold Schoenberg, but maybe slightly more palatable, if you like. Huge influence on, bizarrely, Radiohead, because Yvonne Loriot, her sister Jeanne Loriot, was a key onde marteneau player. Onde marteneau is a very early electronic instrument which Messiaen used notably on Turangalila, his epic symphony. Anyway, there's gone full circle between Messiaen and Radiohead, but I think Messiaen has influenced a great deal of people with his structures and his time signatures, and the way he was composing music. I think a lot of the minimalist school would have taken cues from him. I was also revisiting this enormous box set, the organ works from 1926 to 1951, played by Messiaen himself, because he was a great organist. Somewhere between the Baroque stylings of Johann Sebastian Bach and the minimalists, wanderings of Terry Riley. Somewhere in between, you've got this. I recommend this, but it's 6 LPs, so you've got to be prepared to sit down for a while. I want to talk about Ralph Vaughan Williams. Nobody talks about Ralph Vaughan Williams. He's a British composer from the early 20th century, and his music is much in the vein of a tone poem. There's often only the harmonic range is not very wide. It's only based on often like 2 or 3 chords, very modal, in approach, but very sort of spirited and kind of floating in the air. This is a beautiful set. It's got Fantasia on green sleeves. Everybody knows green sleeves, and it works so well, this thing. It's just I picked this up for a few dollars at the local thrift store, and I've been playing it a bit. It's choral work. It's beautiful choral work. There's the London Symphony Orchestra and chorus, with Elsie Morrison on soprano, etc. It's a very lovely piece. Okay, let me move on from classical music, and I was playing this piece this morning, Bunalim, revisiting. I've had this for many years, probably about 6-7 years. Bunalim were a Turkish psych band. This was reissued from 1970 to 1972, as the hype sticker says. This is a reissue, obviously. And yeah, Yeah, they mix Anatolian rock with fuzz, psych, a little bit of prog. Um, you know the sound. I mean, I don't need to describe this in great depth. Go and take a listen to it. And since I'm on, slightly ethnic kind of like Turkish music kind of thing. I've pulled this out because I was watching a video from a French YouTuber called Disc 007, I think. He does videos only in French, so if you don't speak French, it's going to be very hard for you to follow. But he made this video recently, which was really cool, and he showed this record, which I have and love, Antoine Innocence. This is a very strange record to describe. It's almost kind of like North African. There's a North African sonic, sort of North African soundscape almost, and his singing is kind of reminiscent of something that's very more Middle Eastern than French. The scales that he uses on his, with his playing, with his guitar, are it's very sort of like almost Moroccan, in a way. It's a fantastically diverse and, off kilter kind of record, which in France can be found for next to nothing. It's a slept-on classic, I reckon, Antoine Tomé. And I think if you're in for some more adventurous sounds, if you want something that's slightly, like singer-songwriter, but sort of, off the beaten path, this is a great recommendation. You can find this for not too expensive. I still think that it's one of these records that is being slept on. Some jazz. I'm going to talk about some jazz now. Okay, I saw that ECM is doing some new reissues of some of their previous works. I don't really know why. At times I think everyone's cashing in on the vinyl resurgence, and ECM has thousands of titles on their catalog, and I'm sure that they've gone, why not? They've reissued this Gary Burton and the new Quartet, which is one of their very first ECM 1030. I guess it's the 30th title on the catalog. I guess maybe if people can't find the original, they can always get the reissue. So it prompted me to pull this out, and I mean mine's pretty beat up, but it's such a great record. It's the opening track, "Open Your Eyes, You Can Fly," which is a Chick Corea Return to Forever kind of tune, is so funky and loose, and obviously Gary Burton plays the vibes. He's one of the greatest exponents of the vibes. Very highly recommended. And because I was in my jazz shelf there, and I pulled this out, I thought, I haven't played this forever. It's pretty beat up as well. The bottom is completely split, but I don't care. This is even better in my opinion. The Gary Burton Quartet with orchestra, a genuine tongue funeral with a great lineup. Cala Bley, you have lineup is amazing actually. Larry Coryell on guitar, Steve Swallow on bass, Steve Lacy on sax, Mike Mentler on trumpet, Gato Barbieri on tenor sax, Cala Bley on piano. Like, it is like an epic symphony. It goes through different moods throughout the record. It gets really wild and free at times, and other time very, very melodic and very sort of like, in the pocket kind of thing. But lovely record. I haven't played this forever and ever. I was really happy to rediscover it. I love the artwork too. It's a beautiful piece of artwork. I also revisited this Donald Byrd record, Ethiopian Knights, very much in a kind of Mondishi, Herbie Hancock vein. Electric Miles. That's the kind of vibe. It's a beautiful record, produced by the Mizell brothers already or not? Oh, I can't remember. But in any case, no, produced by George Butler. Sorry, the Mizell brothers came on later. But Harold Land on tenor sax, Bobby Hutcherson on vibe, David Walker on guitar, Joe Sample on organ. I mean, gosh, that is a who's who again. A who's who. Beautiful record. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I mean, you know, these records, I recommend all these records. They're all good, you know. I played Penny Arcade by Joe Farrell. Again, Joe Farrell, a very underrated sax player, I reckon. Very, very underrated. Nobody talks about Joe Farrell ever. All these CTR records are interesting, and this one is one that I don't play that often, but I think it's great. It's got a great cover version of Too High by Stevie Wonder. It's very funky. This is Jazz Funk 101. And it's got, look at the lineup, Herbie, Steve Gadd on drums. Steve Gadd on drums, fantastic. Joe Beck, yeah, it's just superb. Since I'm talking about jazz, and I'm talking about Bobby Hutcherson before, and Vive Player, talk about this, which I picked up recently. It's a 2023 release. It's the Brian Blade, whatever they called. I think, okay, they call Life Cycles. The band is called Life Cycles, but it's Brian Blade and a bunch of other people. And that's them there. There you go. And it's like a tribute to Bobby Hutcherson, which you could think that this is a Bobby Hutcherson record, but it's not. It's them just playing a few tunes that you know, are inspired or written by Bobby Hutcherson. I really, really highly recommend this. Just take a listen on Bandcamp or something. Likewise, I picked up the latest Asher Gamadze, which is called Turbulence and Pulse. Asher Gamadze is a drummer from South Africa. I very highly recommend this as well. It's kind of loose, free, kind of spiritual jazz. It's a long listen, and it works well on CD, because I think if this was on vinyl, it would take 4 sides easily, but on a CD you can get the full experience of the thing. And as I'm talking about modern jazz, I've got some really quality pieces there to actually talk about as well. Here is Green by Robo Hands. Robo Hands is a jazz group from the UK. I don't know. I think they're from London, but I'm not sure. You can check that out. And they're made of it's a 4-piece. Andy Baxter on drums, guitar, bass, piano, synth. Joe Hunter, Francesco Umberti, and Peter Milanovic are all making up the band. This is a modern masterpiece, in my humble opinion. This is one of these records from the UK jazz scene, which is not really talked about very often, but should be spoken in the same breath as The Comet Is Coming, as Matthew Halsall, as you know, all these greats from that scene, the Sons of Kemet, and you know, Tenderlonius, and those bands from the UK jazz scene. This should be always spoken. This is the best record. It's an amazing, again, what would you call it? Spiritual jazz, but funky jazz. Jazz funk with a little bit of spiritual kind of jazz mixed into it. And again, likewise, a great modern piece, which is a new record from this year. This is Ebbs meets Joby. I love the cover of this. It's got you can't see this, but it's it's more than embossed. It's stuck on this piece is actually stuck on the cover, which is cool. These ones are not, but the pink one is. Joby are obviously, they released a really great record a couple of years ago with the lady with the veil on it, which you probably have seen before. Joby are a band from Pakistan. They're made of the three members who play guitar, tabla, and vocals, and sarangi. And Ebs are a band from Poland. They're a modern jazz band from Poland, and they're a 5-piece comprising piano, Fender Rhodes, drums, bass, moog, sax, clarinet, trumpet. So the sound palette is very broad. This is a superb sort of East meets West kind of record. My next Gimme 10 will be on East meets West, so talk about Joby again, but I highly recommend. This is from 2023. It's killer. I love this record. Another 2023 release I want to talk about is Brand Spirits. That's not a jazz record. It's a neo-crat rock, neo-psych record from Melbourne. Is the hype sticker. Sounds like Can meets Hawkwind. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. More like Noi for me personally. But so there are 3 pieces from Melbourne. I already have some of their records, but this one was issued on Soul Jazz Records for the first time, so they sort of broke on a more international scene. Second side, the last 2 songs, very, very psyche, very like extended jams, like going full knacker on those. Take a listen. It's a beautiful record. I mean, look, I recommend. So just take a listen. A couple more and I'll be done. I picked up the reissue of Stakes is High by De La Soul because, well, why not? It's a great record. And like everyone talks about 3 feet high and rising, for example, or De La Soul is Dead, but Stakes is High is probably their masterpiece, self-produced kind of folly, very long album, but the sampling and the rapping is just as good as on the debut, and at least didn't get sued for this one. And you can pick it up now. It's been reissued, and it'll probably eventually go, and you won't see it for a long while. And pick it up if you like hip hop, as I do. And I'll finish off actually with this beautiful. That's the last thing I'll show you because it's too long already. I was playing this beautiful bill as well. A groove-based journey into the heart of Cuba. So what this is they're samples of Cuban bands with found sounds, and he sort of assembled it like it's like plunderphonics almost. It's phenomenal. It's Latin music but with an avant-garde edge. If you find this Imaginary Cuba by I recommend again. Okay, love you all. Interact, that's all we want here. Don't do it for anything else. And I shall respond. Take care.